before you start to glaze, you need to actually prepare your pieces. In the kiln, dust does accumulate on pieces, so you need to actually lightly rinse them off with a sponge. You can just take your pieces to a sink and completely soak them to wipe them off. However, you then need to let them sit for 24 to 48 hours. If you want to glaze in one day, just take a damp sponge and you're going to run it over every surface, making sure you get into any texture. You're going to do that for both the exterior of pieces and the interiors. Rinse off your sponge every now and then to re-dampen it and get any dust out. If you're getting a lot of dust, make sure to go back and wipe everything away. Ideally, it's good to let that sit for a good half an hour or so before you actually start glazing. The next thing that's really helpful is to actually use wax resist on the foot. So by using wax resist, you can actually block glaze from adhering to certain areas of the surface of a piece. It doesn't prevent the glaze from melting during the firing, so you do still have to wipe any glaze that gets on the wax resist off. However, it does make it much easier to actually clean up the piece. In terms of things with feet on them, as a general rule, I recommend just using wax resist on the entire foot. With other objects, you always want to glaze. You always want to use wax resist between 1/8 and 1/4 inch up from the bottom. And by doing this, it gives the glaze room to move a little bit. So if it melts a little bit more than it's maybe supposed to during firing, it actually gives it room to move without adhering to the kiln shelf. If you had glaze on the bottom of a piece during firing, it will melt to a kiln shelf, so do not have glaze on the bottom of your pieces. You don't have to use wax resist, but then you have to make sure you wipe everything off really well. With objects with a foot, you can either wax resist the sort of middle area of the foot, or you can actually glaze there. I recommend glazing there, partially because the more glaze you have on the piece, the better, and then just leave the foot ring unglazed.